Hello, my name is Ariel Jaffe from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, Department of Statistics and Data Science. So this will be the first out of four short videos dedicated to transformers. So we all know transformers are the building blocks of today's modern language models used for data generation, text, code, images, videos, etc., but numerous other applications from medical and biology and neuro and truly endless number of applications. And the series of videos, the purpose is to kind of unravel the mystery behind the transformer architecture. Basically, at this point, there's numerous variations and types of transformers. Obviously, the goal is not to provide a comprehensive overview of all possible architectures, but mainly to provide a basic understanding of the building blocks of the pipeline that constitutes a transformer. Now, as you may know, the famous original paper of it's called Attention is All You Need from 2017. On the left, you can see the list of authors. And on the right, you can see the original architecture of the transformer used in that paper and the application was translation. And as you can see, it is quite complex. It has multiple stages and components. And basically, in these videos, the goal is to kind of explain each one of these components, kind of like the main logic behind the pipeline, the transformer pipeline, and the attention mechanism. As you can see, the specific structure is complex. It's an autoencoder, but it has kind of like a merging of two inputs. And towards the fourth video, we'll go back to the specific structure and kind of try to understand what's kind of like the logic behind it. So this is kind of like a very, high overview of the transformer components, can say, or pipeline. And the basic idea of transformers is to take the original observation or sample. So that can be a sentence slash paragraph, or it can be an image or a video or, I don't know, a neuroimaging scan, and break it down into small tokens. Okay, so as we'll see in an image, it's different areas inside the image. In text, it can be words, or even in modern transformer, it's usually uh, small parts of a word. So this is a kind of a token. And once you do that, you compute an embedding, kind of like a representation, a vector representation for each one of those tokens. And these embeddings are later used to kind of compute the relation between different parts of the observation. So if it's an image, it would be different parts of the image. And if it's a sentence, that can be different, the relation between different words or subwords. And the main idea is that if you want, for example, one of the main applications of transformers is to compute a low-dimensional, meaningful low-dimensional representation for the observation. So you would like a vectorized representation of an image, of a sentence, etc. And to that end, the main idea is that a sentence is not a bag of words, right? It's not, if you take a sentence and you permute the order of the words, you lose the meaning. And basically, the whole idea of attention block is to kind of try to compute the relation between the different parts of a sentence, because an expression is much more meaningful than a single word. And a sentence, or the kind of like taking different parts of a paragraph can provide much more meaningful understanding than a small location within that sentence. And the same thing goes for images, right? Um, if we look at an image, we don't only look at kind of like a single location. We look at the whole image. And when you compute a combination of different areas within the image, then you can really get kind of like a low dimensional representation that really captures the essence of the image. And then you can use the low dimensional representation for whatever you want, right? For some downstream task, it can be clustering or training a learner for prediction or whatever you want to do. Okay, so this is kind of the idea of, on the one side, breaking up the sentence or the image or the video into small parts and then computing the relation between all the small parts. And this is kind of the heart of the attention mechanism, which is the attention block. In between, by the way, there's the positional information where you kind of take the original embedding and add to it something that relates to the position of the words within a sentence. Okay, so because you don't want really to lose that information either. So you add the position of the word within the sentence or the patch or area or specific region within within the image. Okay, and then you have the output. So this is kind of in high level. Obviously, we'll get to much more detail in the coming slides and videos of the different parts. And in this video, we'll mainly cover the tokenization, okay, the breaking up of the observation, the text, the image into small parts. So an image is quite straightforward, right? You take the image and you break it up into patches. Okay, say it can be, I don't know, 10 over 10 pixels. Okay, so if it's a grayscale, it's just a square or rectangle. If it's a colored, say RGB image, so that will be kind of like a three-dimensional tensor, like a width, height, and you have also a vector of dimensional three, which represents the color. And that part, so we break up the image into kind of small areas. These are usually referred to as patches, and then you vectorize the patch. Okay, so if it's a grayscale and you use 10 over 10 patches, so you get like a vector of dimensionality 100, and at the end of the day, you kind of reshape the original image into a matrix. Okay, so you have the number of rows in the matrix is just the number of patches, and the number of columns is the size of each patch. But that is not the end of the kind of like the tokenization, because then you want to learn a more meaningful representation for the different patch. Okay, so the representation is not the actual pixel values, as you might have thought, but in order to be more to increase the expressiveness of the network, you use a learned either one layer or more. So it can be in the simple case, it can be a single layer. Okay, so you have a single linear layer would just constitute a matrix. Okay, so you learn a matrix, say of size 100 over 200, and then you can learn a new representation of size 200. Or it can be a much more, maybe more complicated than that. You can use a convolutional neural net. Okay, so a convolutional neural net will kind of like combine the breaking up of, so the convolutional neural net is just a sliding window. Okay, so if use certain parameters, you can use a convolutional neural net to actually both break up the image into different parts and learn the representation using one, two, three layers of a convolutional neural net, and that is also an option in modern transformers. Okay, so at the end of the day, this is kind of like the two first blocks here, breaking up the image and learning an embedding for each, it's called token. Okay, so this is in images. In text, it's different. Okay, so in text, you break up a sentence into words or even maybe smaller parts, but for simplicity, I'll treat like each word as a token. Okay, it's just easier to explain. So, for example, if you have a sentence, so the main idea is that you have kind of like a vocabulary of representation, and this is kind of the matrix you see on the bottom. So here, every column is a single token, okay, or a single word. Um, and the main idea is that the embedding of, or the vector representation for each word is a single column of this matrix. So for example, if you have a sentence and you have repeated words, for example, the word think appears twice in this sentence. So this is kind of like the same token it should have originally before we treat the position. Okay, the position will be treated in the next video, but before we add the positional information, the representation will be identical for these two words because they are the same. And this matrix, by the way, is also a trainable part in modern architectures. This matrix of token or word representation is also a trainable part of the whole transformer architecture. Okay, so this already gives you a huge number of parameters. For example, and the vocabulary can be of size, say, of order tens of thousands of tokens, maybe even more. And the embedding can be of the order of hundreds, even for small scale transformers. So that's already a huge number of trainable parameters. And and this, as I said, this matrix is learned during the training of the transformer in modern architectures. Okay, so this is the end of the first video, and that's it.